What's your best of these cars? What do you think?
Well, the car that I drive is the Model S flat.
Which is that one?
That red one in the middle.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's 0 to 60 miles an hour in 2 seconds. So faster than a Ferrari.
That's pretty fast. I don't know if my people can handle this. They're gonna be using it more. I'm not allowed to use it. Should I get in?
Get in.
Okay. Let me get in a second.
On the Tesla?
Do you want my notes?
Yeah.
They gave me notes. They said, I'm not Biden. I don't need notes.
Yeah. I can take it.
Thank you. Let me get into this sector. I'll watch Secret Service go crazy. Thank you.
I mean, if you actually drove it around, it
Oh,
would
that's
be well.
beautiful. Wow.
I get into the other side.
That's beautiful. This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer.
Everything's computer. So much there to discuss. My favorite part is when Elon, his staffer, offers to hold the notes. Dan, what struck you?
Just that he had not seen computers in a car. I'm not sure when the last time was he ever drove a car or sat in the front seat of a car.
Sean.
I mean, there's some fun facts. He mentioned the Secret Service has prohibited the president from driving for, probably going back at least a few decades now, where they don't actually allow the president to drive a vehicle. So that was sort of fun that he spoke the quiet part out loud about that. I think it was also, to me, there's always these like ironic moments, if you will, which is people love to talk about the Barack Obama / Seth Meyers Washington our White House Correspondents' Dinner as what may have driven Trump. And then Tesla, as you remember, was conspicuously left out when Biden did a big White House EV event. And so now here we are with all of those Teslas on the White House driveway. And there's sort of it's a reminder that, it all comes back in the end. And so Elon was shunned by the Bidens when it came to EVs. And now here he is on the White House lawn with all of them laid out. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then obviously just President Trump reminding people he doesn't need notes.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning meeting. I'm Mark Halperin along with Sean and Dan. Delighted to have you here. We're normally forward-looking on this show, but that was an historic moment in American history. We thought it was important that we share at least some of it with you. This program is modeled on the morning meetings by the television network and news organizations who run through the day's events, kick it around a bit, and then here we'll take your questions and comments. If you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your electronic hand to get in the conversation. We always love new people. So if you have never asked a question, it's safe to ask a question. We're a very friendly group. I talked to someone last night who suggested I be a little friendlier and more encouraging for people. So again, Sean is very nice. I'm very nice. Dan, despite his bared teeth, is also very nice. So please don't be afraid. No one's ever been harmed, human or animals, in the making of this program. So please, if you've never raised your hand, today could be your day. I'll run through the schedule. Usually we start with the president's schedule, but I'm going to start with the vice president. He's holding a St. Patrick's Day breakfast, or maybe it already happened, at his house. And then
I got my green on.
Yeah, that's good. I forgot. All right.
No, it's not saying you can wait. Monday, you got it. Today, this is just,
for the pros only. For the pros only. All right. In Louisiana today at 11:30, there's a hearing in front of a federal judge, Jesse Furman, about what to do with Mr. Khalil, the Columbia University graduate student, although there's some question about whether he's still a student. The Trump administration wants these proceedings to take place in Louisiana, where he's currently detained. His lawyers would like him to be brought back to New York City, and so we'll see what happens at that hearing. As always, judges can rule from the bench or not. They can take it under advisement, so we'll see where that goes.
Well, they can also kick it to an administrative judge, right? An immigration judge. So this is an Article 3 judge. If that judge says this is an immigration thing and kicks it to an immigration judge, not an Article 3 judge, guess who those judges report to?
That'd also be fine with the administration. House is out. Democrats are at their, I like to call them retreats. I like to call them off-sites in Leesburg. Opening press conference at 1:45. There's another press conference with Debbie Dingell later in the day. They're hearing from all manner of wise guys and gals from the Democratic Party about all the usual topics: messaging, strategy, elections, etc.
But Mark, interesting that 3 governors thinking of running in 2028 are going to be there: Bashir, Shapiro, and Whitmer. That's an interesting.
Yeah, It's
Flag.
interesting, supply and demand question of how they ended up there. Senate Democrats are meeting today to talk about something we'll discuss in a minute, which is how are they going to deal with the House passed bill, CR, that they don't like, but they also are not super inclined to block. So let's now go to the president's schedule. First, the pool today. Put that up, please, even though I said don't. The pool, interesting group. Oh, sorry. Take that back down. I apologize. Before we do that, I meant to tell everybody the inflation numbers. So this would be 109, please. Inflation 2.8 in February, less than expected. So it beat expectations. It's generally good news for the country, good news for the administration. Although the latest drop in gas and egg prices, I don't believe are reflected in this.
No, they
It
couldn't be.
it does suggest a trend, as my friend Mark McKinnon would say, excellent, as egg prices and gas prices are both down at least somewhat. All right, back to the president's schedule. The pool today, made up of what we've now come to expect, the admixture of old traditional people. This should be 103, please. Old traditional folks and some newbies. We have 103. If not, you go straight to 101.
Well,
That's-
what's not on the pool, I'll tell you about in just a minute because it ties into the schedule.
All right, so let's go to 101, please. So the president's day revolves entirely around the visit. Sean, how do you pronounce that guy's name?
Taoiseach,
The
Michael
Taoiseach.
Martin.
The Taoiseach arrives, and it's all the events that this is one tradition that Donald Trump has not chucked out the window. They do the event at the White House, and then they go up to Capitol Hill. But we're told there may well be press availabilities around this. So that's the first part of his day. And then Sean's going to want to talk about one of these meetings. But then you did go to 103, please, or 102, please. And then the president comes back to the White House and has a St. Patrick's Day reception. I was not invited to that.
And
Sean,
Mark, I think it's worth noting, this is one of the few things that not only does Trump keep doing, but is genuinely bipartisan. I mean, almost every Democrat with any Irish population will be there with their green tie or green, jacket on. People, it is, people smile, like maybe it'll fall apart in the next few years, but this is something that has been genuinely bipartisan.
second only to National Ice Cream Day on the Hill.
Well,
or Seersucker Day.
You left out, I'll show you. This is my attire for last night. These were the Irish pants that only come out for the t-shirt.
Whoa, I like it.
Yeah. You can see it on Instagram. Much better. So here's the deal. There has been a lot of talk in Ireland, and not just talk, pressure on the Taoiseach to come and, stand up to Donald Trump. And at that 11:50 meeting, Michael Martin is going to have a choice. And left to his own, I think he would stand up to Trump. They have a big issue with Gaza, and they want to raise that. If that happens, I think this day could go as, the new, I'm going to term it, it could go full Zelensky. The other thing, and the reason why the pool matters, is in talking to some of the Irish media last night, they were gauging my take, whether they should bring up issues like Gaza in that pool spray. And if this thing goes off the wires at 10:50, to your point, Dan, my advice to that I have shared is that you get a full day. Ireland has a full day. Starts at the vice president's house, goes to the White House, goes to Capitol Hill, comes back to the White House. There's the Ireland Fund dinner. I mean, this is, and if you want to make this about policy that really doesn't directly impact Ireland, you are about to throw away a decades-long tradition, because I think Donald Trump will go, forget it, we're not doing this again. So keep an eye on that 10:50 meeting. It could go swimmingly well, or it could get off the rails real quick. But at 10:50 in the morning, we're going to get a sign how that day is going to go.
Sean, do you think he'd go at the Irish Catholics? I mean, you go at the Ukrainians, it's a very small population here. The Irish Catholics are not insignificant in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in a lot of swing states. Do you think he'd go to war with them?
He's not running again, Dan.
It's not even over war. I think, look, here's what I mean. And as an Irish Catholic, I will tell you, if the Taoiseach comes in, and I've said this, I have no problem saying it publicly. If the Taoiseach comes in and wants to go toe-to-toe and tell our president and our country what our policy should be with respect to Gaza, I have a problem with that. And I would say, I mean, aside from being a reflexive Trump supporter, I would have a problem with that. And I think it would be a huge mistake to undermine something no other country in the world gets the carpet rolled out like Ireland does. And I would hate to see that go away because either the Taoiseach or some members of the press decided to derail this thing. So it's a great day to celebrate our culture and our history and the bonds that tie us. There's tons of bilateral trade, foreign direct investment. And I hope that we can celebrate that and build on it and not try to undermine it so that someone can score political points.
You mean kind of like when J.D. Vance went to Europe and told them how they should run their countries and how
Yeah, there's a difference. No. It's not telling them how they should run their countries. It's telling them, hey, we're not going to bail you out anymore. We're not telling you how to run your countries. We're telling you how to live up to your obligations.
Oh, J.D. Vance went way further than that, but okay, that's fine.
All right, couple procedural.
But I will
things.
tell you, this is, to me, this is going to be, as I said, a possible Zelensky moment.
Couple procedural things, one for each party that are getting ripe here. Senate Democrats have to decide what to do about the CR. I believe where they're headed is they'll provide enough votes for cloture, but then vote no on final passage. Either of you disagree with that?
No, it's the ultimate weenie move.
But do 8 of them vote for final passage?
No.
You think it goes down?
Maybe. No. They don't need
No.
But
they can pass.
Oh, right. And then it goes to the floor. Okay. Yeah.
I think 1 or 2 might vote for yes on final passage, but probably most of them don't. And they just
I don't know. I just have a problem thinking that if you're Warner or Kane from Virginia in particular, you can be as loud as you have been about federal workers and then vote no.
You can say it's going to pass.
Right. And the flip side, Sean, is they are fighting for their constituency in Northern Virginia. That's
exactly. They have more constituents than just federal workers. Hey, put up that Politico thing. One good news for federal employees who are being laid off. I say this slightly tongue in cheek. You'll get the joke. Politico Pro is giving 3 free months to government employees who are in, quote, career transition, so they can keep their access as they sit at home and look for a new job. They can keep the loyalty bridge access for 3 months. I think that's great. All right.
I think that's awesome. And I'm being serious.
I know you are.
I'm
being half serious. And I mean, if you're unemployed, Dan, what use do you have for Politico Pro?
Because they're subject matter experts, and staying in the know will help them as they go to try to get jobs, likely in the private sector, to keep a pulse on what's happening. I actually think good for Politico.
All right. I think they're all going to end up working at 2 Amy's, but maybe I'm wrong. Isn't that the name of the pizza place in DC?
That's one of them. Yep.
Actually, speaking of Politico, they did a post last night. Interestingly enough, they went through FEC reports and We the Pizza on Capitol Hill was by far the number 1 recipient of cash on both sides. 2 Amy's, not even in the top 5 according to Politico.
I don't think it's on the Hill though, and I got to say the reason We the Pizza gets so much money is because it's cheap. It's not very good. Sorry.
Well, no, and it's close.
I'd say it's right. All right. The debt ceiling. There was some talk that it would be in the CR. It's not. There was some talk it would be in the reconciliation. There's a strong opposition to that. So, Sean, where's debt ceiling going to go?
That's a great question. I mean, and also when. I think that's the other issue is, do you do what they call extraordinary measures? Well,
they will. So we never know.
They already are.
Yeah, they already are, but they're low-grade extraordinary measures. I mean, I've heard lots of different estimates. It's to me, it's probably still June, so they got time, but they got to find a vehicle. And I thought that was going to be one of those. I mean,
here's the $1 million question. I think, do you have to find? Normally, you find a vehicle to attach it to. The question is, do you just say screw it, let's put it on the floor and make Dems do it?
You'll never get the votes for that under these circumstances. I mean, we still haven't figured out what they're going to do about California money, so maybe it's just California money in the debt ceiling.
Right.
But do you guys, Dan, what will the vehicle be to raise the debt ceiling?
I don't know what the vehicle is, but I think Democrats are going to sit and they know you need our votes. So they are going to wait for you to come to us.
I think the easiest thing would be just make it California. Put it straight up. You got 54 votes in California, and there's what, 5 or 6 Republicans. The rest are Democrats. So you got 40 Dems. You're going to lose 20 or 30 Republicans.
All right.
I don't think that'll work. Because I think California knows, just like you have to do the debt ceiling, you're going to have to fund us at some point.
I agree.
I think the Democrats are going to sit and wait. And Mark, this goes to the CR. That is a better battle for Democrats to wait and let them come beg us. Totally agree.
Totally agree. But so it's a mystery to be continued. All right. 107, please. So this gentleman, Mr. Lutnick, who we've been talking about, Commerce Secretary, you'll recall, ancient history now, he engaged in massive treachery, according to many of his colleagues, during the transition, where he was head of the transition, co-head of the transition, tried to make himself Treasury Secretary. He was blocked by many people, not just because he tried to pull a Cheney, but because people did not want him to be Treasury Secretary. He negotiated for Commerce, but he also negotiated to be the tariff czar from Commerce. That prize may turn out to be a booby prize, because as you can see from this Politico story headline and embedded within that Wall Street Journal story, both out today and widely read in the West Wing and elsewhere, Lutnick is being blamed for his public statements. I don't think his rivals do not think he's particularly good at talking about the economy, and for not driving a rational and productive and effective tariff gauntlet. So, Dan, is Lutnick going to be fired, or is too close to the president?
I think he's going to be fired this quickly. But look, his greatest asset is his greatest weakness, which is he's incredibly blunt and tough talking. And when he starts saying things like, we may have a recession, but it's worth it, that is not something that the White House, that's just not good. Then the president has to kind of try to clean that up, or he's going to be asked about it. Members of the Hill are going to be asked about it. And so I think so far, Lutnick doesn't do nuance very well at all. And I think, when he was at Cantor Fitzgerald, they were known to be one of the roughest places to work. They were very tough. Lutnick was very brash. He did a lot of amazing things. And there's a great story post 9/11. But I think he's going to have to kind of cool it a little bit in this notion that, like, who cares if we have a recession? Who cares if there's pain? We got to do this. That is not a winning political message.
Sean, that Politico story with the knives out, they say they talked to like 12 people who trashed Lutnick. That would have been par for the course in Trump 1.0. That is unusual here. So why are the knives out for him, and will the knives nick him or kill him?
Well, you're right. That would have been like, a story before 8 a.m. During my tenure.
Yeah.
I think, look, I think that Howard speaks very bluntly. There's no question about that. But I also think the president, he appreciates, he is his sort of like attack dog. He goes out there. The president appreciates, I get it. I haven't asked the president this personally, but from past experience, I think he appreciates the fact that whatever policy is, Howard will go out there and fight like hardcore for it. And that's, I think, very well appreciated inside the president's inner circle, is people who will do that. And so as long as he's on the right side of the president, and generally speaking, I think Howard has a very good sense of where the president's head's at. He's not going to just go out there and freelance. So he spends a lot of time with him. He's very close to him. I don't think everybody might not like it, but that's very different than not being in sync with the president. So the president, I think, probably loves this. Some other people may not, but he's just an extension of what the president's saying.
Well, palace intrigue is not of as much fascination to me as it is to others. But this is a guy who's the czar on what is now one of the 2 or 3 central policy tracks of the administration. So, Sean, I'll just stay with you. Why do you think so many people have the knives out for him? Are they jealous?
Because I think part of this is they expect, like, Trump 1.0. The president goes out there and says something, and then his aides come back and say, don't worry, we're going to stop him from doing this. And I think Howard and obviously Scott and Scott Bessent and Kevin Hassett, but much less vocally and bluntly, are all on the team. Last time you could go to a Gary Cohen or a Steve Mnuchin, and I'm not by any means impugning them, but I'm just saying that they would say, okay, I got it. I hear you. Let me go walk this back a little, or try to, and that's not what's going on now. It's a different version. This administration is not a bunch of people who are trying to slow walk the president.
And Sean, that's not what these stories are saying. They're saying that Bessent and Hassett are not fully on board with this. It sounds like others, some of the senior staff don't like how far out over his skis he's going.
Correct.
So, I mean, that doesn't, it sounds like there is a divergence of opinion about how much he's freestyling Lutnick.
And look, a la Elon the other day, I think if Howard gets out over his skis a little, there'll be a level set where it comes back in and says, all right, hey, I know you're trying to help. But from what I can tell, there seems to be an appreciation that he's willing out there, go out and sell it. And yes, once in a while you go too far, or you dial it, you take it to 10 when it should have been at 5. But generally speaking, I think there's an appreciation for the fact that the team is trying to sell the president's policies and not obstruct it.
So you don't think these stories are the team floating to Trump and Lutnick?
Oh, no. I do. Yeah. 100%. This is your way of trying to communicate with Trump, which is, look, he's not helping you. I mean, yeah. And then somebody prints it off and happens to leave it on the Resolute desk or in the dining room. Yeah, I've seen that. That's how that works, right? It's not like he's reading Politico. It's somebody plants the story, prints it off, puts it in the library, in the small dining room so that he sees it and says, look, wow, Howard's screwing you. But I think that by default, the president, my guess is, sees what Howard's doing on TV and appreciates the fact that he's fighting for.
All right. Before we move to our next topic, mandatory prediction. Who will be in their job longer, Bessent or Lutnick? Who will be in their job longer? Dan?
Bessent.
Scott? Sean?
I will agree, but I don't think it's for negative reason. I think it could be a really close. I mean, I could see both of them going the full 4 years.
Yeah.
But I think if I had to pick who would, I think Bessent stays longer, but I don't think that's because I think there's an element of choice in there, not Trump, not like Trump pushing someone out.
Or does Lutnick try to become Treasury Secretary? Yeah.
Lutnick becomes development czar by Halloween. You heard it here first.
Wait, all right. Like Interdevelopment Bank?
No, head of the fund.
World Bank?
The sovereign fund.
Head of the sovereign fund. He'll become head of the sovereign. Okay. So John McCain, I think, got a bad rap in 2008 when he said the fundamentals of the economy were strong. All he meant was there's a momentary crisis in the financial sector, but that in the real economy, things in America are great. Might or might not have been accurate, but people took it as a sign of being out of touch. So that's my prelude to ask the question, Dan, leaving aside the current kerfuffles over tariffs and everything else, are the fundamentals of the U.S. economy now strong or not, and why?
Yes, they are strong. I mean, inflation is still sticky, but it's coming down. They can't quite get it under 2%, but it's not 5 or 7 or 10% like it was for a period there. And I think what you hear from Main Street and Wall Street is this kind of just desire for certainty, but people don't feel we don't see a bubble imploding. We don't see a sector that is really, heading for the rocks here. So I think the frustrating thing is people feel like this could be better because there are a lot of positives that Trump is talking about trying to do in terms of regulatory reform, energy, tax cuts that Main Street and Wall Street like and are looking forward to. But I do think that the longer there is prolonged chaos, the more likely it is that people just say, we're going to take a timeout. We're not going to spend more. We're not going to do a merger or an acquisition. We're just going to batten the hatches down. And that can create kind of a stagnant environment when Trump would prefer, acceleration.
Sean?
I generally agree with that.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right. One more topic, then we're going to get to your questions.
I will tell you, though, if you're looking for economic advice, this is not the place to get it.
Yeah. Past performance, unfortunately, is indicative of future results.
Yes, there it is.
If you're interested in getting in on the conversation and you don't yet have your hands up and you're on the two-way platform, please find your raise hand button and put your hand in the air, loud and proud, and we'll be getting to you.
By the way, one quick thing there was a thing in Politico this morning that Rahm, who backed away from running for DNC chair, is now, according to J-Mart.
That's our.
Have you read the agenda?
That's our next topic. Thank you for.
I got wound up on the economic thing.
106.
Have you seen the Lutnick stories yet, though? That's what I want.
Exactly. So yes, as Sean suggested, Jonathan Martin in need of a column, but it is true. He does connect the threads. However, he has far too far down in the story Rahm's problems with the left. Okay. He also doesn't mention that Rahm happens to be Jewish, which I think might be an issue for some voters. Interesting he didn't raise that. But I think that I've said this before. It's too common, particularly for Democrats now, to focus on the flaws in their prospective candidates. Yes, they've all got flaws. None of them are a generational talent. There's no Bill Clinton. There's no Barack Obama in this field. There's just not. But Gavin Newsom in particular, everybody focuses on his negatives as if he doesn't have any upside. This story largely focuses on Rahm's upside. And again, I think that's good for the party, but it really, to my ear, downplays how difficult it would be for Rahm to win a primary because the left does not like him, and he's an older white man. So an older white man with a history of attacking the base of the party, to me, seems like a lot of problems, or as Rahm would say, a lot of surus. Sean, J. Mart posits that Republicans think Rahm is formidable. I think it quotes maybe Tom Cole, who's a quote, some Republicans quoted in the story.
Tom Cole.
Tom Cole. And we all think Tom has got very good judgment. So, Sean, start out. Is Rahm formidable to be the next Democratic nominee and president or not?
I mean, look, could he win a primary? And again, sort of like my financial advice. I'm not sure I'm the best person to give Democrat primary advice. But I will say this, as a Republican, if he were the nominee, he is a very, very, as Dan says, he's a political athlete. The guy knows how to raise money. He knows how to message. He knows how to scrap and fight. I would be a lot more worried about Rahm than any of the, like, quote, leading candidates right now because of his political prowess. That being said, even as a Republican, I have a hard time seeing as how he gets through the current base.
Dan.
Yeah, I think, Mark, you said it. Rahm has a ton of talents, as the story describes. I mean, could I see him in the ring with J.D. Vance? Absolutely. Like I as a person who loves politics, like I'd love to see that fight. The challenge is, as you said, the base hates him. I mean, it's not just progressives and the African American community or the Black community, a huge force in Democratic primary politics. He's got some history there that he would have to try to square. I think the challenge, like if I were Rahm, I would get outside the bubble. Like this story is about him trying to kind of court the insiders and appearing in Washington. Like he's not going to win that battle. It's why he didn't even kind of really become an official candidate for DNC chair. I would get outside of Washington because he can give a speech. He's full of one-liners. He's full of piss and vinegar. Get out there and go kind of road test this message in the States and see if you can do a JJ dinner and get them like hooting and hollering, right? Let the DC press see what's happening out there instead of trying to convince, the Politburo that you're the right candidate, because I don't think they'll ever get there. I will also just add the history of the Democratic Party is to go with the safe choice. John Kerry over Howard Dean, right? Hillary ultimately over Bernie Sanders. Joe Biden, even though he got walloped in Iowa and New Hampshire, over Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And so if you're Rahm and you get out there and you start to kind of show something, I think DC would fall in line behind you and you remember like the real world isn't Twitter. So could he do it? Maybe. But as you say, he's got huge problems with the base of the party that everyone says we've got to confront.
By the way, I think it's amazing that what Gavin Newsom's got like 50 million downloads of that Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
He might, if that guy had a clue, he would give up running for office and become a podcaster on the left because he'd make a boatload of cash.
Well, like Sean Spicer, he has Steve Bannon up next.
Exactly. He has Steve Bannon on. A couple things about Rahm to follow up on what you guys said. First of all, he became a columnist for the Washington Post. And to go to your point, he should be a columnist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, not for the Washington Post. He doesn't need,
or just the Atlantic,
or just he doesn't need David Ignatius's support. Number one, number two,
but he needs Jeff Bezos's money.
He doesn't,
and that's a joke. He doesn't. But
he doesn't. Number two is Rahm is one of the best fundraisers in the history of the party. But can he be a grassroots fundraiser? Because that's how you raise your own money in politics now. And I don't know that he can be. Number three.
Mark, I think he can, because the way you raise grassroots money is saying something that like fires people up.
Maybe.
He is willing to say it.
I wonder if he took the DCCC list with him when he left.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing I'll say. People who win the White House have a narrative, right?
Yep.
They have a narrative arc about their heroic story that leads them to run for president. I know Rahm very well for a very long time. Tell me what his narrative arc is.
Sure. I have fought with the base of our party, and I'm willing to do it again for the good of the party. I mean, look,
but
say no.
But first of all, I say no. I'm interrupting you to say no on two levels. One is that doesn't help you win the primary to say I fought with my vote, I fought with the voters. And the other thing is that's not biographical. That's issues. That's about politics. You need a story about your life outside of politics.
Yeah, but Mark, I mean, look, he's going to have to come up with like 4 things that I want to do. Education seems to be one that he's road testing. But what you're saying is I am a fighter who has been willing to take on. Joe Biden took on Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders in 2020, and he would not sign the pledges. He would not do that stuff. And the voters ultimately went with him. Like, I actually think all we keep talking about on this show is the Democratic Party's got to deal with its base. It's got to deal with the litmus test. It's got to deal with these like straitjackets that we keep putting on people. I'm not saying he'll be successful, but if I were him, don't apologize and kind of pull a Mike Bloomberg in 2020 where you like say, oh, I made all these mistakes and I found religion. Own it.
Name something. Understand.
If I were Rahm, I would cling to his story of the American dream. I ran for office. I left, got really, really rich because of my government connections, and then I went back into government.
Okay, you're proving my case. He's done nothing outside of government except get really, really rich because he's been in government.
Right. Donald Trump, it didn't get really, really rich. Like that's not.
He did, but he did it outside of government. He didn't leverage.
I think, Mark, everyone thinks they're all corrupt. No one is going to get up. You could say I'm Little Sisters of the Poor. They all think once you get in office,
Little Sisters of the Poor are poor.
This is like the mistake Democrats make of I won't take PAC money and I'm going to get rewarded for it. No one knows what the hell that is. They think everyone's corrupt. Own it. Own it.
All right. Three closing questions about Rahm. Number one, will he run?
No.
He's going to road. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, AP says Canada's going to announce $20 billion more in retaliatory tariffs today. Sorry, Dan, will he run?
He's going to road test it, which is essentially running. I don't know if he'll officially announce, but I think he's going to try.
All right. Sean, if he does run, who will his most prominent black supporter be?
A former colleague in the House, or someone from Clinton White House. I mean, I'm just trying. I mean, I'm trying to remember who was in the Clinton White House, but yeah, something like that.
Okay, so a former House member or a current House member or a Clinton administration person.
Yeah.
Dan.
All eyes turn to Jim Clyburn and his children.
You folks are forgetting Barack Obama.
I don't think so.
Obama won't touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Nope. No way.
No,
you're wrong. His most prominent supporter, if he runs, will be Barack.
Oh no! He's
Obama.
Supporter, public supporter. There's no way. No.
Or Mark, let me ask you
watch.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna question your Rahm knowledge. Would Michelle Obama support him?
Okay. No, that would not happen.
I think finally, say what you will, Obama's not going to blow it on that.
Finally, yes or no? Will the Clintons endorse Rahm? Yes or no?
Bill Clinton.
Here's a bigger question. Do you want the Clinton endorsement?
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
100%.
Yes, you do. Yes, 100%. You do.
Yes. And you know what? Yes.
Yes. Sean, will the Clintons endorse?
As a couple or individually?
They will endorse together, I promise.
Yep.
Well, then, yes. I mean, if you have that aura of, I know the answer.
He never turned his back on Bill Clinton for a single second. And I think
he did one day. He did for one day.
Okay. All right. 24 hours. Sorry.
But I don't know if Bill Clinton knows. All right. All right. We'll talk more about this. We'll talk more about this. By the way, two-way will be the place for what I like to call premature talk about 2028. We're going to own this space because I can tell from the way everybody lit up. This is all you guys want to talk about. Tomorrow, Amy Klobuchar. Just kidding. All right. If you want to be in the conversation, please raise your hand. Let's welcome in my friend Scott, who is a thriving small businessman, father, husband, and provocateur from the great state of Georgia.
I
Scott,
like
welcome.
the floating bookshelf too. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Scott, welcome in. Scott also has served in capacity in the executive branch of the United States government.
I was a junior aide with a capital J in the Bush White House, 43. So thanks,
Welcome
everyone.
in, sir. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, of course. Love the show. Long-time listener, first-time caller. My question is mostly for you, Sean. Can you help me understand why the Trump administration kind of views Qatar still as an ally? I kind of see a whole lot of carrots, don't see a whole lot of sticks, and kind of given their posture with some things happening in the region and here domestically, kind of what's your stance on where that relationship currently is and where it could kind of evolve in the next few months and years?
It's a great question. I don't know that I could fully answer that. I will say I think a lot of it has to do with investment, Qatari money.
And the
But I also think
I know there's also there's a base. I think it's an Air Force base that it's very
although yes, there's an Air Force base. However, and that has something to do with it. They buy a lot of our stuff, actually our military equipment, and again, they've always anteed up when the president's needed something. And I think, look, to be blunt, I think they've also always treated President Trump with a ton of respect, and he appreciates that. And I mean, frankly, you saw in the Biden administration after all the talk about getting tough. I mean, like there's an element of money and oil that's just, you can't ignore. And I think that has part of it. And that they play the game right. I think, say what you will, but when you look at Qatar, UAE, like it's interesting. Like they really do diplomacy well in terms of relationships. Again, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm not trying to, but I'm just saying like those guys go all in and they know how to, and maybe some people would argue over the top. I'm not trying to judge that, but I'm just saying like they don't kid around when it comes to diplomacy and spreading money around and trying to get people to be aware of what they do and how like I said, you go look at FIFA and everything else. I mean, these guys, they play with house money in a way that's just not normal.
That's what concerns me. Yeah, Dan?
Yeah.
I would say the same thing. Like they know how to flatter Trump, right? You go back to Trump's first term, the trip to Saudi Arabia, where they had the most elaborate...
I will tell you, it was, you can't, I didn't take enough pictures to properly, I mean, like it was out of like Hollywood. The buildings, so I mean, it was they do it. They just do it right.
They're smart. They knew how to get to Trump. And then I think secondly, Sean hit I mean, not only do they spread money around Washington, D.C., I mean, think tanks, the number of consultants they have. I won't get into, there was a group of women recently in the Middle East for a big conference that, the irony of where it was located. And look, the number of private equity funds, hedge funds that have money from the Middle East in their investment pools, like when you have that much money, you have a lot of throw weight, and they are unashamed, smart, and strategic.
Yeah, and I know they've also put $6 billion into colleges in the last decade over the country. And I wonder what strings are attached there.
Scott, as long as we have you here, since you are a Georgia political correspondent, how would you handicap the Ossoff reelect right now?
I think it kind of depends on if Governor Kemp gets in against him. And if that does happen, I think Kemp's got a real good chance.
You think real good or great? I mean, as an outsider, I think from what I've been told, if Kemp gets in, that's almost like an unbelievable game changer. Am I wrong?
I'd be pretty stunned if Ossoff can beat Kemp.
Who's the backup to Kemp?
It kind of depends on what other R's in the state want to jump in. I know that, Doug Collins is now in the administration. Maybe he wants to get back in. I know there's other House members, I'm sure, maybe current.
Is it frozen because of him, because of Kemp? Is it like everyone's waiting?
I was going to ask, would anyone challenge him? No.
It's hard to say. I think it's probably relatively frozen. Also, you have the fight in 2 more years, the seat against
Warnock.
So there is kind of like a plan B.
If you were advising somebody, would you tell them to go now with Kemp or wait and go against Warnock?
Unless something dramatic changes, I would say wait and go in 28 against Warnock. I think Kemp.
Or you think Warnock's an easier target than Ossoff?
But also in a presidential year.
Yeah, again, this, it kind of depends on, as y'all mentioned, kind of who's on the top of the take on both sides.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Kemp is the most formidable R candidate really for either race. And on the D side, I'd probably say Warnock has a little more support statewide than Ossoff, but that's just a guess on my part.
Who's the next governor of Georgia going to be?
I don't know. I know that I know Chris Carr's running. I think it's a pretty crowded race. I hadn't followed that one too closely yet, but I'm sure it'll pick up soon.
All right. And why
Sean,
do you
By
just
the way,
Mark,
if you're Tim Scott right now, you got Kemp, and I'm gonna miss one, but Kemp in Georgia, you got Youngkin in Virginia. Who am I missing? There's one
Sununu now says he
New
might
Hampshire,
run.
yeah.
Sununu in New Hampshire. I mean, you do that. I mean, you gotta sometimes when you're the NRSC chair, you get lucky, and sometimes you're really good. And I got to tell you, I mean, Tim Scott may end up being the luckiest guy in the world if he gets those three folks in the race, because those are three winners.
Sean, does Trump endorse Kemp? Would he, just for the sake of
I
picking
think
that
so.
seat up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
He
Look,
would.
they've gotten to the point where Kemp has done this. I think Kemp has played this really smart in Georgia. And I think the key folks, Brian Jack and others in Georgia, have made it very clear that, hey, look, it's over. He's on your team. We need Georgia, and Trump has played it well. So I think so. I think
Kemp won't run. Collins will be the nominee with Trump's endorsement, and he will win.
Wait, are you saying he won't run, Mark, or if he doesn't?
Kemp won't run. Collins will be the nominee with Trump's endorsement.
So Collins will cut the VA and then go back to Georgia and run.
Correct.
That's an interesting.
It's
as good as it could get for Ossoff.
He won't run. He won't run for the reason too many people do run. He doesn't want to be a senator.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to be a senator. Scott, why do you like two-way, Scott?
I love the role y'all play in American politics. I've been looking for someone like this that kind of has both sides in an intelligent and respectful way, kind of talking about the issues. So I tune in as much content as I have time for, but I love it, and I've been following this from the beginning. Mark, I so appreciated all your reporting last summer during July, during the month that felt like a decade, but it was all top notch. So I love it, and I appreciate what you guys do. Thank you.
Scott, you would have made the promo reel, except you said you only watch when you have time.
I got 3 young kids.
Maybe.
Ready? Hold on. Ready, Scott. Take 2. Go.
Maybe we can edit around it.
I only watch live when I have the time, but then I watch later in the evening
after we put the kids to bed. Just for full disclosure, Scott and I are friends. Just in case anybody's wondering if I'm giving him a hard time. Scott, thanks, man. Great to see you. Thank you for finally coming on.
Thanks,
all right. That was my friend Scott. Here's Sebastian Ridley. Sebastian Ridley. Thomas, sir, welcome back. Thank you for coming. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. I'm in Southern Nevada. What's on my mind today is...
that called Vegas?
Yes. Clark County, Vegas, all that. What's on my mind today is something that I don't think is getting enough attention in relation to the economy, and I welcome you three giving some insights on it in case I missed something. Commercial real estate is a catastrophe in every central business district in the country, regardless of if it's a blue state or a red state. I assumed that with President Trump's election and the Republican majorities in Congress, that would be like a day one issue to do either a bailout, a debt restructure, a prioritization to put light manufacturing in central business districts. I've heard nothing from the federal government, from either house of Congress. Do you all have perspectives on that or insights, or is there something that I'm missing?
It's very hard to do. They're studying it, just like the previous administration studied it, just like the administration before that. It's just a very hard thing to do for any government because the market is not in great shape, and to goose it or to change it from a federal government point of view, unless you pass some very complicated tax bill, which they're not in a position to do, there's not a lot you can be done about it. Dan.
Yeah, I'll say 2 things. no one in their right mind would do a bailout of an industry like that after what happened in 2010. I mean, if Trump, a real estate guy, bailed out the real estate industry, he would face a huge blowback. We don't like spending money in Ukraine. People will not tolerate, why is that industry being bailed out? The other problem is it's a supply and demand issue. I mean, really, COVID exasperated the fact that, you know, a lot of people have not gone back to the office. If they have, it's not 5 days a week. And you get the trickle down effect. People aren't going to lunch as much. People aren't going into the parking garages. People aren't, you know, interacting with all the businesses that you would interact with if you were in an office, you know, Monday through Friday. And so how these districts kind of come out the other end, whether some of it's turned into residential, whether they, you know, some of these buildings go under, Class A real estate, commercial real estate seems to be holding up much better. It's these class, you know, B and C locations that are struggling. And I think the free market, they're going to probably end up going into bankruptcy and someone will take them over and redo them. But I cannot see the federal government touching this.
Sean.
Right. Yeah. Look, it's interesting that you bring that up. I've heard a couple people, and I think I didn't think about it until Dan said it, but the market that you're in matters. So you look at New York and DC, there was I think Axios had a graph the other day. Some of these places are actually doing really well. But smaller cities are getting left behind where people aren't going into the office, you know, haven't returned as much, or the prices have fallen. But from what I understand from the people that I've spoken to over the last 12 months, there's a real concern about where things are from interest. Mark?
Gene Shaheen is not running for re-election. Go ahead, Sean.
Ooh. So, well, Sean, you said it's great to beat Tim Scott. Kirsten Gillibrand may have a few beers at the lunch today on the Hill.
or something stronger. Yeah, it's a St. Patrick's Day lunch, by the way. So there'll be some Guinness served, and I would opt for the real Guinness, not the Guinness Zero. If
so,
I were...
Mark, does Governor Sununu then you think jump in?
If he wants to be a senator, he walks in.
Yeah, no. He strides in today, baby.
or is
there's no jumping necessary.
What's the name of the woman House member, Maggie, who just got elected? Maggie Sullivan, is that her last name? Right?
Not she's the other.
No. That's the senator.
House member
Maggie
who just got elected.
Goodlander.
Madly Goodlander, thank you. I think she'd like to be a senator, but I don't know. Running against Sununu, if Sununu runs, is
that's
Mark. Does anyone ask Carolyn Levitt today if she?
Yes, they do. Now I will tell you
Lutnick,
when I
press secretary.
I will tell you when I floated her as a Senate candidate a few weeks ago on this platform. I heard from 2 New Hampshire Republicans who said, "You don't understand our state. She could win a primary. She cannot win a general election." I don't agree. Don't agree.
All right. Well, she's on my show Friday. I will ask her.
Sebastian,
all right,
Sebastian, thanks for coming in. I wonder if she's got a briefing between now and Friday. Great question,
she does.
Sebastian. Thank you. Well, I don't know. She should have a briefing today.
You're right, but she
might.
Yeah,
she might. By the way, the White House has been tweeting like crazy about the inflation numbers, and they put out a big press release already about how America's roaring back. Tom, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know if that snow is real.
That snow was real, but it all melted. You know,
Okay.
We had like 65 degrees up here in central Jersey, so it's gotten very warm outside. But the cold's coming back.
Welcome in. So how many times have you been on two-way before?
This is my 3rd time.
Welcome in. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, last week, switching it, we talked about appropriations a little bit of how it's done through a committee and so forth, and that all these called unique items are not really listed when it gets to the budget vote and so forth like that. It's more underneath the program or under a more general category. So my question is, you hear that Rubio has canceled some programs, we're saving this much money and so forth like that. And I thought there was rules that when money of a approved budget is cut or reallocated, it goes to like a fund. So where's the savings coming from, 1? And then 2, why are we so not detailed with our listing, or who's in charge of approving those crazy programs?
Sean.
So are you talking about, so when they announce savings, where does that go?
Well, first of all, why isn't the appropriations actually listed? Okay, exactly the detailed of it. And then when we say a program gets canceled, and it does get canceled, where does that money get saved? Where does it go? Where does it, and how do we say it's a savings? If it can't be, in other words, for the calendar year, it probably has to stay, right? And then the following year, it's not approved.
So you're asking a really good, complicated question. And the answer is it depends. Because some of these guys are obligated to spend money in a fiscal year, depending on the money and the contract. So in theory, it should be savings. Some of these programs, like they're announcing that they're ending. And so does that mean that you're not reappropriating the money come October 1? Some of it you're stopping full stop. Some of it's actually ended. I mean, there's a whole panoply of things that are on that chart that DOGE puts out. And some of it you need a decoder ring. And the answer is it just depends. I mean, the idea that the reason that you hear the word like impoundment and rescission is they're trying to claw back some of that money and saying, we want to basically get it back now. And then the bigger question is, even then, where does it go? Because it's not like you put it to the credit card. It just goes back into the general fund. And remember, we're $2 trillion in deficit, right? So it's not like there's savings. It's just that we're maybe not having the full outlays. And I think that's why in the next 12 months, you're going to see the reality of how much isn't being spent versus how much is being saved. And the other reality is it's not being saved, because part of the reason they're trying to claw it back is when you look at what they call the score, meaning how much are you actually spending. The Congressional Budget Office and the Office of Management and Budget claim that tax cuts cost money. So they'll say, well, that tax cut cost $1 trillion. So part of the reason they're trying to recoup $1 trillion in savings is so that they can spend or have outlays of up to $1 trillion in additional tax cuts. So you're asking a really, really good common sense question that I think most Americans ask. And unfortunately, the way our government operates is not in a simple, easy way. And there's like 8 answers to your question. And I apologize that we don't have the time to go into the detail of each, but it's such a smart question that should be able to give you a much easier answer.
Tom, thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you, Sean.
All right. We've got our New Hampshire correspondent here, Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham, can I unmute you, or are you on the phone reporting? Michael? Huh.
He's muted, Mark. Okay.
I know.
Hey, sorry.
That's all right. Michael's one of the best reporters in New Hampshire. He's
I'm multitasking. We're kind of busy,
I know,
obviously.
I know. Tell us, Shaheen's out, so forget about her. Who's going to run? Who's going to win?
It's going to be Scott Brown, because Governor Sununu doesn't want to be a U.S. Senator. But I don't know that Scott Brown's going to win. This has always been the question. New Hampshire's a very blue state at the federal level. Only one Republican win going back to 2010. If Chris Pappas runs, he's a very acceptable, he's crafted a moderate Republican. He crossed over on Laken Riley last year before Laken Riley was cool. And he's going to be a very formidable candidate.
So both House members are Democrats, and you're saying Pappas.
All 4 are Democrats from New Hampshire.
Yeah, but you're saying Pappas would run and Goodlander would not?
I don't know. I mean, the word on the street is her mom, Tamposi, who was part of the George H.W. Bush administration, a Republican, has this plot for her to become president eventually, and that involves becoming a U.S. senator from New Hampshire. But that's all
I saw that on Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. That's all the rumor mill. The fact is, she's got plenty of time to run for Maggie Hassan's seat. You know what I mean? Like this, she's barely older than Caroline Levitt. You know, she's got real money. Jake Sullivan's got a job at UNH. So could she run? Absolutely. And this idea, by the way, that she can't win she came out of nowhere. She had not lived in the district since the W administration. She crushed a former candidate for governor who had the 100% backing of Annie Custer, the incumbent who was going out. Goodlander is very strong. But the question is, why fight Pappas now when you can have a free field in a few years?
Jake Sullivan's teaching at the University of New Hampshire?
UNH and Harvard.
Harvard, okay. I knew about Harvard. And would Pappas have a primary?
I mean, you assume, because it's so rare that you have a open seat that you would. Trivia question for everybody. The last incumbent federal Democrat in New Hampshire to lose a primary. The last Republican was Bob Smith in 2002, last Democrat.
Gene Shaheen to John Sununu.
Never, no incumbent Democrat
lose a primary.
ever lost a primary.
Ever
in New Hampshire.
Well,
at the
most
federal
people,
level.
very few people lose primaries in America these days.
This goes back to like the 1890s. I mean, it's like they just don't do it. So
would Carolyn Levitt be a real player?
No, I don't. I mean, once again, her name's not coming up. You've got Scott Brown, who's been working it a long time. He only lost by 3 points in 2014, and he ran in 2 minutes after being from Massachusetts.
But he lost, and he's still not really from New Hampshire any more than he was back then. I mean, I know his wife didn't his wife just run for Senate in Massachusetts?
She ran for Congress in 2 cycles ago. But remember, Maggie Goodlander had literally not been in the state.
I understand.
Since 9/11. People don't care about carpetbagging up here.
All right, let's get down to brass tacks. Would Trump endorse Sam Brown?
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
I mean, Scott Brown. That's the only issue.
Yeah,
that is the issue. One of the big issues, and the word on the street is that they've patched things up. That he was obviously they had that big blowout after January 6th because Scott Brown was very negative about January 6th. But they've made amends. The real question is, and once again, this assumes Chris Sununu doesn't want to be a U.S. senator. And if you go back and read what he said about the U.S. Senate, what he called the Republicans, I mean, they can't wait to have him come visit.
But wasn't there a report yesterday that said he was considering it?
So at NH, we just published it that he told the Washington Times he's considering it because he's been asked. But he also said, because we did a poll last week that showed Sununu beating Shaheen by almost 10. And he said that shows that Shaheen can be beaten. Yeah. And so, it's been a steady drumbeat of, do you really does she want to spend 18 months as Senator Jean Biden with people asking about an 80-year-old starting a 6-year term? And apparently the answer we found out today was no.
Is Pappas a good candidate?
Yeah, he's a very good candidate. He a couple things. Manchester is a formerly red, formerly blue, now moving back to red city. It's the biggest city in the state. He represents it. He's from there. His family owns a legendary restaurant there, the Puritan Backroom that claims to have invented the chicken tender. If that were me, I would hide that in shame, but whatever. He's very moderate. He's a nice guy in his interactions, there was a time, I guess, when being gay would have been a thing, but that's certainly not a case in New Hampshire in 2026. And so he'd be a very strong candidate. And here's the problem. If it's Pappas, it's all about partisanship. The whole race is Trump, yes or no. Are you going to back Trump, yes or no? I think Shaheen was the weakest candidate Democrats could have run because the issue would have been age, yes or no. Can you really still be serving in 2032? So I think this is actually a setback for Republican hopes of picking up the seat unless Sununu runs. If Sununu runs, it is all over. Do you guys know Mike Dennehy? He's a political guy, been around for a long time. He told us yesterday in our coverage that if Sununu got in, Shaheen would just get out because it would be that uphill.
The one thing I will say is
maybe Billy called Chris and said, "Are you going to run?" And Chris
that's
said,
true. It could be possible.
Chris said, "Yeah."
It's a small state. Everyone knows each other.
I was going to say Lewandowski get in.
Is there money? I mean, is there a check?
Sean, if Corey called the president and said, "I want that seat," wouldn't the president have to endorse him?
If it's going to be all about Trump, make it all about Trump.
I just don't know that I don't know that he can win. I mean, he might be able to win a primary, but there's a lot of baggage there.
I don't know, man.
I have to.
Wait. Hold on. No. Is the question, would Trump endorse him? That may be the case in a primary or whatever, but I just don't know that. I think there's a lot of people that would say that's going to be a problem in a general election.
New Hampshire's a state where Trump is underwater by like 5 right now, and that's the best he's ever done.
If I'm Tim Scott, I'm wary of Scott Brown. Scott Brown's not that good a candidate. He's just not.
Well, you have to look at the bench. If it's not Chris Sununu, then who is it? And Scott only lost by 3 points in 2014 when he first got here. Since then, he's been doing these backyard, barbecue things with all the presidential candidates. He's been out, talking about his military stuff. He has his little rock band. I will say this: he would have been a good candidate against Shaheen because he's such a young. He has puppy dog energy, and it would have been very much an age issue.
But Michael, doesn't New Hampshire have like 1,000 young Republicans that would want to
there's
run?
no bench in New Hampshire. There's none because to have a bench, you have to play musical chairs.
There's only
one
offices.
chair.
No, but I mean
the governor's
somebody
race.
that would have no paper trail That's not, no, that if Trump were to say, because then he hasn't criticized January 6th or she, whatever, that they could pick. I mean, if Trump endorsed,
they have no statewide presence. They're just state legislators.
yeah,
But even beyond
one.
that, there's no state legislator that's in the group. Look, here's the deal. New Hampshire doesn't vote Republican at the federal level. Period. It doesn't do it. So you start there. So you have to have a someone who's above the party, and someone who's above the party.
Yes,
That's the only guy.
All right,
so,
we got to go. Michael, thank you. Come back regularly. Thank you. Sean, remind everybody what you have tonight.
Stephen K. Bannon. And I have a list of questions for that guy about Elon and everybody else that I have a feeling Steve never disappoints.
All right. On two-way tonight, sponsored by the Bonson Group, we have Paul, I believe his last name is pronounced Orgel, of C-SPAN, who's done an incredible series on new members of the House of Representatives. So we're going to meet a bunch of new members of the House, and of course, we'll have a wrap-up of all the day's news. Grateful to everybody for joining. Thank you for being part of the two-way community. We will see you tonight, and then again, all three of us will be back here 9 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, because if it's 9 a.m. Eastern Time, Dan,
it's the morning meeting.
have a great day, everybody.